listening to the Killin Local Heritage Talk by Davie Osler from the Killin Music Festival 2017.
Welcome to the Killin Music Festival 2017 Heritage Talk. We're very lucky to have Davie Osler here, who's going to give us a wee insight. He has mountains of information, so we're going to give you a sort of an abridged version of all the stuff, and then we're going to email out the full text. Hopefully he won't read the full text, because we'll still be here when the bands are starting on the stage tonight. He's put an immense amount of work into this. So I'll hand you over to Davie Osler.
Well, welcome to Breadalbin, the upland of Alban, or Alpa, the old Gaelic name for Scotland. This area is well known to the Scots who journeyed here from Ireland. They came across from Ireland. They had originally been settled in Spain, and they moved across to Ireland. They settled there, but as tribes were moving across Europe and that, they were pushing pressure on the people that were living there. So these people were moving on and moving on. And they did have kinship with the Picts that lived in Scotland here. And this area, around about Killin, Breadalbin area, was part of the Pictish province of Fortran. And it was Veritunes, as the Romans called them, the people that lived here. They had been fighting the Romans all the time, as the Romans had tried to push up, and the Romans had a permanent camp down about Ardoch, which is down just below Crieff way in modern Scotland, and they did raiding parties up this way, and at some time the Picts must have been fighting with the Romans and that, because a bag of Roman money was found over at the Clachaig there, at the back of the bar that's over there, was found in the field. That is now in the Museum of Antiquities in Scotland, as is a lot of the stuff from here. Now, before the Picts, Killin had been settled by tribes who had followed up the country as the Ice Age retreated, and that they had followed up, been able to live and things like that. And in the Bronze Age, here in Killin, over at Kinnell, the road that goes down from the side of the pub there, in the big field, the Great Field as it was called, just before we get to Kinnell House, there's that stone circle. That stone circle has been there since the Bronze Age. Now, it's not unique about here. There's a lot of stone circles about here, all over the countryside, all from the Bronze Age and that. My granddaughter was quite amazed the other day when we were talking about it. Oh, she said, I thought that was a Roman folly. She said, I thought they built, she says, I thought that was a Victorian folly. She said, I thought they'd put that there in the Victorian age just to make it look good. I said, no, it's been there since the Bronze Age. But people don't touch these things. And farmers have always left these things standing. It's seen as ill luck. The Bronze Age Scots had gradually evolved into the Picts as we know them, and they had fought the Romans.
Just a quick question on that, sorry. As long ago was the Bronze Age?
Bronze Age would be about, certainly before Christ, it would be 2000, probably good further back to 4000 BC, would be the kind of Bronze Age age about here. Bronze Age was, the whole of Europe had the Bronze Age, but they had it at different times as technology spread and things like that. It's usual, some place would get something and then it would spread through the area. Anyway, in the Bronze Age, these people evolved into the Picts. The Picts, as we know, had fought the Romans long and hard, and the Romans never eventually conquered them. And when the Picts came here, the Scots traded with them from Northern Ireland. The area of Ireland we would generally call Ulster today, Northern Ireland, as we speak about it, which has always had an affinity with Scotland. And as they were trading there, some Scots would come across and settle, and through time a community built up in Dalriada and of Scots. And as more Scots came over, of course the pressure was to move out and move on. And they generally got on with the Picts, so they were okay to move on. There was times that there was battles, probably because they were starting to cross too much. It was a bit like the migration problems that we're getting nowadays, with people trying to come into Europe from Northern Africa and things like that. These are people that are pressured in their own countries and that, and have to leave, and they're pushed on, and then they're coming and they're trying to settle up here. Same difficulties would be the difficulties that the Scots had as they moved in here, and where they were trying to displace Picts or that, then the Picts would start fighting with them and things like that. But generally speaking, the Scots were able to move in and with no great difficulty. And so after the Scots started moving across, then Picts really started to get upset about it, and there was a major war about the 670s, and the whole of the Dalriada community was just about wiped out by the Picts. But the Picts were fighting wars continually on three fronts. They were fighting the Danes all around the coast, they were fighting the Scots in Dalriada, and they were fighting down towards the borders with the Northumbrians. And this was why at times they had, because they recognised Scots as a kind of kin, they didn't lean too much on them. They prepared to concentrate their forces against the Northumbrians and the Danes, who were invaders. In 838 AD, a major battle was held between the Danes and the Picts. The Danes won the battle, and most of the battle-hardened leaders of the Picts were killed. A bad time for the Picts, and the Scots took full advantage of that at that time, and they were able to come in. So then, what the first ones that really came across were the Saints, the coming of the Saints. This is Glen Lyon today. We've taken that picture along, that's the wee village right at the end of Glen Lyon when you come out, just at the back of Fort Dingall. And that is actually the original village of Dull, although Dull is now signposted as further on. And Dull is a very interesting place, because one of the first saints to go there was a guy called St. Adamnan. And St. Adamnan had come over with St. Philin. They came over together. And when they got to the Drumalbin, they tossed up who would go where. And Adamnan, he got Glen Lyon. St. Philin, he got Glendochart. So that was how we ended up as we were. And this is Adamnan's stone, which is a marker place in the village of Fortinghall, where they say that he got rid of the plague. The plague was sweeping up Scotland, killing lots of people and that. And the thing is, apparently, he went over to that little knoll, put his foot on it, and commanded the plague to go in. And Glenlyon didn't actually suffer from the plague, but that's probably because of the distance between the people and things like that. They didn't live in such close community in those days. So that was St Adamnan. We'll not go too much into St Adamnan because St Philin, we've got so much more about him. But just to mention some of the other saints that were about here at the time, there was St Kieran, St Carmack, and these people all had their own places in this about here. St Davie, he was actually Mornish, and there's a small graveyard down below Mornish Farm to this day. It's just a wee rock stone bit thing made of, but that was a graveyard from way back, and that was where Royal MacNaughtons were buried. These MacNaughtons were an ancient farm. They're probably the oldest name in the district about here. That's why I was asking earlier on if there was any MacNaughtons here or that, because their name means son of Necton. But it's in a Scottish terminology, but they were probably originally Picts, patterned after the Scots had taken over, and that they've been assimilated into the Scottish way of doing it. So they have then become MacNaughton, whereas the name means son of Necton. Necton was a Pictish king. So then we come to St Philin. Now St Philin, we're in St Philin here, because this mill, a mill, not this mill, this particular one, but a mill has stood on this site for 1,000 years. There's an old picture of the mill as a working mill. You see the wheels on the other side. And it is an actual working mill then.
So how old is this building?
This one was built about 1840. I can remember it being used for working. I can remember Graham Wilson, who used to own it when I was a young boy about the village here, and but by that time all the tweeds and everything were made in big factories down about the borders and that, and it came here, but it would maybe be cut up and tailored here and that. Prior to me as a young boy about Killin, some of the older people that I knew, they used to tell me about, there used to be a football match between the tailors and the weavers. And the weaver, because there was 2 working mills in Killin still, even when I was young. There's another one down the banks of the River Dochart, just behind those new flats. When you go down that way, there's another old mill there. And then there's Yellow Cottage as you go down Canal. That was a mill originally as well. But of course, obviously, because in those days, a lot of them would be meal mills, because folk would be growing their barley and their oats and that, and they would take it to the miller. And then you had to pay the miller's fee, but then you had your oatmeal and you had your barley and everything for sustaining your family through the winter. You didn't just go to a supermarket in those days. So anyway, St Philin, he came down here. Now St Philin, you can see actual models of his artefacts here. That's 2 of his main artefacts. That's actual models of them. That is the bell, and that's what's known as the cogrich. Now that cogrich actually contains which is the crozier. That is the old walking stick of St. Killin, and that was built specially. That's why all the holes are in it and things like that, is because all the embellishments that were on it when St. Killin had it were taken off, and then they were added outside to the Cogric afterwards to make it look supposed to be like, but to protect the crozier. Now, these artifacts of St. Killin these were saved from Canada. The Jews came back, as you'll find out as we get through this wee chat later on, when we start talking about the McNabs. And the last Jew of the Cogric, a Jew in Old Gaelic meant keeper. And the Jews of Killin were of a very high standing because they kept these artifacts. Because when Robert the Bruce became King of Scots, he became King of Scots. He dashed and he took the crown in 1306 when he stabbed the Red Cummin in Dumfries Kirk, which was a terrible thing to do in those days, to kill somebody in a church. Now, everybody was Catholic in those days. So, because he did that, and the English were wanting to run Scotland at that time, they wrote to the Pope and they had Robert the Bruce excommunicated from the church. He was thrown out of the Roman Catholic Church. He couldn't take Mass any place or anything. And that was the kind of thing that was very important to people in those days. I mean, he would be totally at a loss, not being able to pray and take Mass. So, what he did, when he came, after he crowned, he met the English in a battle outside Methven. And he fought that battle the traditional way. They lined up in a line and they charged the English, and the English just totally decimated them. His army was hammered. He escaped up through towards the road to Inverness, and then cut across by Aberfeldy and came up Loch Tay side, and he was heading west to try and get away from the English. Killin was a very remote place in those days, far, far away from any place. So he came through Killin here. He was relatively well received in that, and then he carried on up to Glendochart, and St. Fillan's Chapel up Glendochart. He stopped there, and the abbot went out and spoke to him and that, and the abbot asked him if he'd like to take Mass. Well, he says, "I'm sorry, Father, you can't do that. I've been excommunicated." And the abbot said, "My son, you don't need to worry. I don't come under any Church of Rome. It's the Church of the Caldees, the original church." He says, "I only have one boss, the boy upstairs." So he went in and he prayed at the church. And he took a confession in that. And it was during that time, sometime, that he got a warning from the abbot to be wary of his back and to watch the road ahead. He said, because there are people that are against you that are close by. So when Robert the Bruce left there and went out, the MacDougals of Lorne, who were kinsfolk of the Red Cummin, had set a trap, and they had been warned by the McNabs from Killin, because they were also kin of the MacDougals. So he was caught in a trap just a place called Dalry up Glenlyon, up Glendochart, and he only just managed to get away from there by the skin of his teeth, by forming what was called the Bruce Wedge, which he used to great effect many years later in his battles and that. And he had a, what was the leader kind of got to the front, and then the men, and they just formed themselves into like a wedge like that, and then they would just charge right at the middle of whoever was lined up against them. And of course, just to go through like that on horses, and you held your mate's reins and he held your reins, and that, so you were all packed tightly together. Okay, the guys on the outside are probably all going to get killed and decimated and that, but the majority are going to get through, and you're going to smash whatever army it is. And he used that to great effect for many, many battles after that. So he got away at that time, and then of course, as we know, Robert the Bruce built his strength and did all his bits and ended up with the Battle of Bannockburn. And it's worth mentioning at the Battle of Bannockburn, I'll come back to that just in a sec as I move on here. This is the Craigeach I'm doing, and we've got various, the Bernane, the Bell, we've done the Craigeach, the Bell, the Bernane. This is actually the Kilmichael Glassery Bell, which the museum sent me instead of the Bernane. But we do have a model of the Bernane there, and that is the model of the actual bell that was St Fillan's Bell here in Killin.
Davie, can I ask you a question, please? Is that Kilmichael Glassery in Argyll?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a very famous bell, that. That's also in the National Museum of Antiquities. I got these photographs from them. They very kindly sent them, and Ron printed off the pictures for us. So that's the Bernane. But then there was the Fergie. This is the third bell. It's not known what it was. It was derived from an Irish word, Ersh, which means a shrine. So they think it was a shrine of some kind of St Fillan that that guy looked after. And then you had the Main. Now the Main was meant, it was in a special case, and it was meant to be the left arm bone of St Fillan, because St Fillan was reputed to write at night. He did a lot of writing in that, and when he wrote at night, he held his hand up like this, and a light beam shone down. Oh, you're disbelieving, I can see that right away. But the story was that a servant that was sent to tell St Fillan his dinner was ready wondered what St Fillan was doing, and he peeped through the keyhole, and St Fillan was writing with a shaft of light. And let's see, so when the guy went back, he told the rest of the folk there, and the next day that guy's eye was pecked out by a pet stork that they had. So don't disbelieve.
Go into that a wee bit further, because I'm interested in how that bell came to arrive up here.
It never arrived up here. No, I got that
So what
photo.
did it do with-
They sent me that photo instead of the photo of that. I'd asked them for that. They must have thought, oh, that's a better looking bell. We'll send them that one.
So, in actual fact, St Fillan didn't have that one.
No,
Right, okay.
never had it. It just, I got that.
So you need Argyll now to promote.
Yeah, so we'll get rid of that as soon as we can. So this left arm bone, that was what was paraded in front of the troops at the Battle of Bannockburn. You see the films, and it's actually the Main from Killin that was paraded, which the Abbot of Glendochart took down in the battle. The legend is that at the battle, when they were praying before the battle, click in the tent, And this Abbott got up and he ran into the tent because he was really worried about this thing. And then he shouted out, "Sire," he says, "it truly is a miracle." And Robert the Bruce said, "How? Why?" He said, "Well, sire," he said, "I did not want to bring the actual main." He said, "I brought the case." He says, "But that click," he says, "the bone has a beard." So the bone was actually in the case. So they looked on that as a great omen for the next day for the battle. And of course the rest is history. So you can see it's all true. That's the main. Then you've got the Misa. It's the fifth relic. It's referred to in an ancient document relating to a claim for rent made by Lady Margaret Stirling, the wife of Sir Colin Campbell Minority, against John Malcolm MacGregor in the court of Bailey, Glendochart. And that's held in Killin on the 9th of February 1468. And in it, it's saying that John publicly that he did not hold the tack of the lands of Corryhainen from the said Margaret, but from the Jewer of the Misha. A tack in those days was like, say, you paid your rent to your taxman, T-A-C-K. He was the guy that you owed rent to for living in that place. And these Jewers of all these various artifacts of St. Fillan, they held free property, rent-free, from anybody. They didn't matter. And this was a bone of contention later on as new people moved in, like the Campbells, moved into the area and things like that, because they wanted rent from everybody. They didn't see why folks should get it free. And there was actually court cases, and it was upheld that the St. Fillan's relics people were free, because Robert Bruce had passed special laws about them after the Battle of Bannockburn and everything, in gratitude. He also destroyed Killin after the Battle of Bannockburn as well, because the MacNabs had helped the MacDougalls against them. So Killin got destroyed. And that was the first time all the MacNab papers were destroyed. There's very poor history on Clan MacNab, because twice it was burnt. It was also burnt in 1645 when the Covenanters were on the go on that. And General Monk came to Killin here. He destroyed Ellenrand Castle on Ringmead. So that's the St. Fillan's healing stones. These were the saints that come here, that settled amongst the peoples who were now a mixture of the original Picts, Scots who'd come in and things like that. The Scots had their tribal loyalties, and this is where we now have the coming of the Scots. The oldest name in the district, the MacNaughtons, from the name Necton, which is the Pictish king that was on the go at the time. And then we've got McDermott's, and that's a wee graveyard down in lands that McDermott still have to this day, down at Lars. That small graveyard been used since time immemorial. Gregor and I were down there, it was lovely. Another name, local name here at that time, this is the first names about Killin. This is before the real clans and that. You've got the Macmillans, Cabries, Mingies, Drummond, Napier, Haldane, Robertson. These are all people that owned lands here, Loch Tay side, the whole Bradalman area, for many, many years, before clans had become settled into a whole area like they're known as nowadays. So the first ones really in this area as a clan was McNabb's. And the original McNabb lands about here were Bavane, which is up Craignavy Road there, on the north side of the River Dochart. And that was their lands to start with. But nearly 1,000 years in Glendochart, McNabb's. The McNabb history is absolutely incredible through the years. That is Francis the 16th Laird. He ran the estates into such debt, such horrendous debt, that he had to actually skip the country. And what he did was he ran away to London first of all, and he had friends in London, and his friends in London paid his passage to Canada, and he went across to Canada. And because of his standing as a chief and that, he was well received in Canada. And one of the early governors of Canada was a McNabb. So he got pretty good contacts. So he got the government of Canada to give him 70,000 acres of land, which he was supposed to divvy up between his clansfolk. It was free land. But he saw it differently. Francis saw it differently. He wanted to live the life of the clan chief still. So he wrote home here, and he wrote there, he said what a great country it was. Come out and cheap rents and everything like that. He didn't say it was free. And so there was a whole wave. In 1823, the first wave went out from Killin, and there was 3 different waves of people went out. The area is a place called Arranprior over there, which were also lands that he had here, which is down by the Lake of Menteith. And he got the people out there, but he got them working and living as clansmen like 200 years before here. They had to pay rents to him. They had to treat him as the clan chief. Everything was done for the clan chief, the way it had been done for hundreds of years here. But people were getting more educated then. People weren't so silly then. And there was some folk that were quite learned, and they went asking questions about Canada and that, and it came to the attention of the Canadian government. So he had to do a runner again. So he took off to France, and then he eventually died. I think it was Hortney, if I remember right. And he was the last kind of chief of the McNabb for a long time, and the name fell into abeyance for quite a while. It was kind of resurrected after the war, when Archibald Corrie McNabb of McNabb successfully contested to become the clan chief. And he actually, when he had taken off to start with, he just left everything as it was and took off. The Campbells, who were his biggest creditors, inherited all the lands. And one of the first things they did was they built Ochmore House, which you'll see shortly. And on these lands, and they used the lands thereafter. Archibald Corrie McNabb, when he bought them back in the late 40s, early 50s, eventually he got all the clan lands back and that, and he didn't like this McNabb edifice on his lands. So when he had the chance, Ochmore House was blown up, and you'll see a picture of it getting blown up just shortly. But That's the McNabs. They were an awful plan for picking the wrong side, always the wrong side. The Campbells were the exact opposite. They always picked the right side, and that's, as we'll see, that's how they became the biggest one. If there was a wrong side to pick, the McNabs would always pick it. But they were a Ken Speckle kind of clan. They had people like Francis and that, and Finlay, the 15th layer. Finlay, no, he was the 14th layer. And Finlay was the guy who his folks had been robbed, who were bringing goodies for Christmas to Killin, to Kinnell. By that time they were living at Kinnell. Oh, he was livid. His clansmen had been away to get all this stuff that he'd ordered and had been robbed by these McNishes who stayed down St. Phil's. Some 100 years before that, there had been a major clan battle between the McNabs and the McNishes, and the McNabs had just about exterminated the McNishes. There was only a few of them left, and they lived on the island in the bottom of Loch Earn, and they commandeered all the boats on Loch Earn, so they kept them over there at night, and they felt quite safe at night. But the Finlay, the predecessor to Francis there, he said how he was livid. He was thumping up and down. He's 12 sons, and he's done. The night's the night if the lads were the lads. And Smooth John, or Black Ian, whichever way you want it. Some parts of the islands he was known as Black Ian, other places he was used Smooth John. But apparently he was a big, really dark, brooding kind of Highland guy, and he wasn't a guy to tangle with. Anyway, he got up, and all his sons followed him. They went out and they lifted up their boat, and they carried it right over the hill and down onto Loch Earn and put it on, and then they sailed across to the island, raided the place, did everything, cut the head of the McNishes off, and took it back to Killin with them. And they carried the boat back, apparently, right up to the top of the hill. But by that time they were absolutely exhausted, so they left the boat there. And I don't know if it's true or not, I don't know. I have heard people have said that up until the turn of the 20th century, you could see the old moss encrusted ribs of the boat or that. But I don't know, I've never seen or heard of anything like that. Have you, John?
No.
No, I don't know. But anyway, that's the story as it was. So Annie came in and he threw the head up the table to his father, and he says, the night was the night and the lads were the lads. So that gave the McNabs their crest, because their crest to this day is a savage's head. And so anyway, it gave the clan their emblem, a savage's head, a boat, and the motto, Timor Omni Abesto. And just as a matter of interest, I lived in a row of cottages in the village that are known as McNab's Buildings a few years ago now. And in the garden, I had to do major excavations in the garden at one stage. And when I was doing them, I dug up an old mill wheel, and it had exactly that motto written around the edge of the mill wheel, Timor Omni Abesto. I didn't know at the time. It's obviously something to do with McNabs.
That's an important question.
Yes, you carry
Did
on.
they get their Christmas presents back?
Well, I think they got more than a Christmas. I think they'd just be looking for the New Year carryout. I think that's what it would be. Yeah, in those days, anything of reasonable quality, you had to go to either Keith or Perth or something like that to get it. I mean, nothing like that up here. Everything would be pretty basic here, you know. So, they had a good Christmas anyway. That picture of Francis, that's the one painted by Rayburn. That was owned up until this year by Dewar's Whiskey. And it was in the boardroom of Dewar's Whiskey for years, which became United Distillers, which became Guinness, which became whatever the hell they're called now, Diageo, is it? And they sold it this year to the Scottish Government. And there was a public subscription, and the government put, I think, 10 million towards it, and the whole thing cost 20 million to buy it for the nation.
Was it not a bit of a lad too? Was it not a bit of a lad?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm just trying to come into this is some of his wee capers here. I really now. You see that row of buildings over there? You see the wee pub at the end? That's probably the site of the original Croft House. All those buildings built in from that, they were built from his time. As John's alluding to there, he's supposed to have fathered 33 different children in the village. He was never married. Couldn't get a wife. he had one that he promised. He said, "You'll love it, you know." He says, "We have the most beautiful burial ground in the world." I think she thought, well, I'm not really wanting to die at the moment. I want to live a bit, you know. So she took off. But he never married. I don't think he had time. He was too busy. And I mean, one of the stories about him going down the village is two wee laddies rolling about fighting in the ground. They're knocking hell at each other. He said, "Hey, come on, laddies," and he grabbed them with pull them. And one, he says, "He's saying he's the laird's son," and I said, "No, he's not. I'm the laird's son." Yeah, rest in peace, laddies. You didn't need to fight. You're both the laird's sons. Used to go to London a lot, and you know, gallivanting about. He felt himself as the great Highland laird, and when he went to London, the wags down there always used to like to kind of take the mickey out of him and everything like that. And if he was at a table in a restaurant, and it wasn't like the most obvious top table kind of thing, he was maybe stuck away at the side or something, they would wind him up and say, "Oh, you're the McNab. If you'd been a great Highland chieftain, I would have thought you'd have been sitting at the top table." He says, "Listen, boy, where the McNab sits is the top of the table." That was the kind of thing he used to come away right away. And one of the times he was down, he visited a cockpit where they were doing the cockfighting. And he watched cockfighting, and what a shame for the poor wee birdies. He says, "That's terrible." He says, "I could bring a cockfight Killin." He says, "I could annihilate anything there." And then, of course, right away the wags are on them. Oh, and so it ended up there was a big bet on it, big money. So he came back to Killin here. Sent the clansmen up the hill and everything. So he ends up, he's got this basket heading back to London. A couple of clansmen carried it. He gets into the place, and so the pride of Tottenham, marching about with the spurs on and everything. and he just got the clansman to open the basket, and he had a half-starved young cock eagle in it. And I just came out and that was the end of the Pride of Tottenham. And of course, there was all the arguments. He said, but that's not a cock, he says, it is, it's a cock eagle. And he says, I said I could bring a young cock from Killin that could beat anything here. And that's what I've done. And he actually ended up, he won the bet. So, just through clever use of words. Anyway, that's kind of, he was not very much. He held the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the Royal Breadalbane Volunteers. Those days there was always the threat of this invasion from the French and that, you know. So you had these fencibles and volunteer regiments all around the country and that. They could be raised quickly if that bit of the country was invaded at any time and that. And on the parade ground at Taymouth, he used to give his commands to his men in voluble and forcible Gaelic. He was also suspected of whisky smuggling by the excise, but they could never catch him. However, on one occasion, they came very close. He was on his way to Stirling with his fencible boys, but they had a couple of barrels of whisky tied to one of the horses. And the excise raided him. And when the excise raided him, they demanded to know what he was carrying. But he told his men to load and cock their weapons because these people were getting in the way of a man that had the king's command. So when they did that, the excise thought it was more opportune, they'll get him some other time. And they let him through, so he got away with it that time. But that's the kind of man he was. He was a wild, wild man. Archibald, the man that took over from him, is the guy that went to Canada and did all the bits with him. He was actually a nephew of his. When he died, that was the line of MacNab dying out. He was the last great chief of the MacNabs. So that's the MacNabs. We're now going to the MacGregors, Clan Alpin. This is where it's an opportune time to maybe say MacGregors, although this was never their clan lands, MacGregors were all over the place because they had come with the original swathes of Scots moving across, and there was MacGregors all over all down Loch Tayside. There were small villages of MacGregors, and right up Glen Lyon and all that roundabout. Of course, Balquhidder was a main bit, as we know latterly, but the headquarters of Clan MacGregor is called Glenstray, which is at the back of Strommillican near Dalmally. And this is Cairnban Castle in Lyon. It's that's the old castle that was built by Grey Colin, the first Campbell that came to this area many years back. But it was on the site of previous fortified houses, you could say, and you know, the Cairnban Castle is the site where Gregor Roy, he actually married Gregor Roy MacGregor. He became a chief of the MacGregors, and he was local. He was born Loch Tayside. He married the daughter of the Campbell, Robert Campbell, that stayed there at that time. He married that daughter. The MacGregors and the Campbells were not great enemies at the time when he married into that family. But through Grey Colin and the next Campbell, who was Black Duncan, things just got worse. And the McGregors were chased, harried, murdered, you name it, whatever. But anyway, this Cairnban Castle, Gregor Roy used to visit his wife there at times after they'd fallen out with the Campbells, and he was getting chased by the Campbells. They had bloodhounds and everything, used to hunt him, and chased him all over the country. The Campbells, as they had moved into the area, what they wanted to do was they wanted the rents, the tax, as I said earlier on, TACS, of these people. Now, they were happy to pay the rents, but the Campbells wanted what was called man rent. Now, man rent was a totally different thing. Man rent was where you paid your rent as a tax, but as well as that, you also promised to, well, you recognised the Lord as your superior Lord, because he was the few superior, and you had to give him allegiance, and you had to fight for him if required, and you had to arm yourself and go and do whatever he wanted you to do. And the McGregors wouldn't do this. They only recognised their chief, and they totally refused to do it. And he couldn't get a McGregor to do it until McGregor, he eventually signed up the bond of him, and it was a bond whereby you promised to, he signed up this bond of man rent, and he lived at Mournish, which is about 3¼ miles out of Killin here, as you head down the north side to Loch Day. And he probably didn't sleep easy at night after that, but he had signed it and that, and it totally outraged all the McGregors and that. And there was this guy called Duncan Ladisach, and he was from Ardichel, which is about a couple of miles out, 3 miles out of Killin, heading into Glendochart. And he was Duncan Ladisach. Ladisach tends to mean stern. He was like a hitman for the clan. He was a wild guy. So anyway, Duncan Ladisach and his son visited this guy McGregor at Mournish one night, and when he came to the door, they just ran him through with the swords and killed him on his doorstep. And that was a warning to any other McGregor of what would happen if they took out the bond of man rent with the Campbells. Of course, the Campbells then had to protect that guy's family, and so there was all the hue and cry started, and they were dead against the McGregors and started hunting them, and that's when this Gregor Roy started to get into difficulties, because when he had been a child, he'd been kind of orphaned, and the Campbells had actually looked after him, and they'd brought him up in this Cairnban Castle, and there he'd met the woman who was to become his wife, and eventually he'd married her. But him being the chief now, that he was the chief victim as far as the Campbells were concerned. So he was hunted. So of course they watched for him going to the castle to visit his wife, and he had 2 sons by this time as well. Matt. So they chased him with the bloodhounds, and he only just managed to escape minutes at a time. This is where he got away from the bloodhounds, running and jumping across the River Lion. Then this is the picture's done with Gregor's throne side on it would have looked better. Because it doesn't actually look that far, but when you go down there, it's quite a leap actually. But anyway, he got away from the bloodhounds that time, but he was eventually caught. And when he was caught, he was tried very quickly with a Campbell jury, a Campbell judge, probably Campbell executioner as well. And he was tried at Taymouth Castle. And there's a very poignant Gaelic song which I was hoping to have the lassie that sings it here today, but she's at a folk festival in Ireland because she's very up in Gaelic studies and everything like that, and so she's over there doing it. But this is Mervyn Ringis, and this is this particular song.
Moch Matilda Gidoni, Bami Sögren gra, Ach mundanig miana, Slische bei mocha, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Sors mochi alwai, ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Chuin daher ar kuai, Nam big daher iag jechinyach, Es mogriger en kjaun, Habig mohu ashilaki, No mariana ingundai, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Sors mochi alwai, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Chuin daher ar kuai, Struik na chro maher aunen gale, Agus kalin yum plai, It big nian an ruani, Suach basa slai, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Sors mochi alwai, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Chuin daher ar kuai, Struach na chrofin larig nase, As fialach mord smal, Is grikar panam basial, Vieder mohalai, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Skors mochi alwai, Ochan, ochan, ochan uri, Chuin daher ar kuai, Get vi kuras kahakaun, As lana shachshian, Yo krikar yo sakrakan, Is katlamech fuyan, Bau, bau, ashrein vik, Anja hast afla,
Yeah, very, very lovely song.
Do you want me to go back to the picture of Finlarrig?
Aye, you bet. Finlandic gets, as she said, sang in the song, were it ablaze, because Finlandic was the headquarters of the Campbells at that time, and they were just in the process of moving down to Balloch, as they called Taymouth, but it's not like the Taymouth that we have nowadays. Marvin, I really wanted to be here to sing. That's the ruins of Finlarrig Castle as it is now. My camera lens didn't open properly that day, so don't worry about it too much. You might get the odd picture like that as well that day. Finlarrig Castle, this is the Campbells. I think it's worth just mentioning back about the end of that song when she said she dreaded the day when the child that was on her knee, who she was singing to in that song, would not try to avenge his father, but he did. There's the actual English words of the song and everything like that I have here. And then Alistair, his son, was the guy, and he went through the same kind of terrible times of his father and that, and the McGregors just really got so bad at the time that even King James prescribed the name. It was illegal to use the name McGregor. The name was to be wiped off the face of the earth. Women were branded with a key on the forehead. Children were taken away from the parents and brought up by other families. You got a price in Edinburgh for a McGregor head. If it was an adult, you got a certain amount of money. The child, you got a bit less. Now, I mean, that's what we're speaking about here. It's a fearsome time, and that went on into the late 17s. You're speaking something like about 180 years. But anyway, we'll forego all that now.
Sorry to interrupt now. To go back, you talked about Gregor Roy. We've all heard of Rob Roy McGregor, so are you talking about the same guy?
No. I have a bit here, I've got a small bit about Rob Roy, but Rob Roy is a peripheral to Breadalbyn. I'm speaking particularly about Breadalbyn today. And Gregor Roy and Alistair were chiefs that were born and brought up in the area. They are two chiefs of McGregor, and it was their interaction with the local Campbells and that created their history, you know. So no, that's good. I want people to speak like that. Rob Roy he had a lot of interaction here. As you go up Glendochart, you can still see the gable end of one of his houses there, one of his hideouts. And there was another one up at Aston Gian, up at the far end of Loch Lyon. But he had a few. But we're going to go on to the Campbells now. And this is their lovely execution pit at Finlarrig Castle, where they used to cut the heads off if you were a toff. You didn't get a choice, but you could either get hung or you could get executed. Executed, your head went on the block and your head was cut off. And in my younger day, I can remember the chains. You'll remember it, John.
I've got the stone with the shape of the head in it.
Have you?
I sourced it. But Mrs. Sands had it, some silly fool threw it into the pit and broke it into two pieces.
That's right. I remember it's broken in two.
And then it changed hands. Finlarrig estate changed hands on several occasions, and happened to be over there one day. So that two stones either side of the driveway, each half. So I'm in negotiations at the moment with certain folk.
Oh, good.
And
yeah, that's right.
back where it should be. The chains are in the Heritage Society's box of tricks.
Are they?
They ended up down in South England.
This is the thing. There's so many of these things because the stuff was in there when we were children, but you would never have dreamed that taking stuff away or breaking stuff like that. But the way the world is now, it's just a different.
I don't know whether Davie was involved when we were at school, but we did a little survey on how you were executed there. It was quite fearsome because you didn't. The stone is so big with the shape of a head in it.
Yeah.
But it was a horrible thing to lie face down in it.
Yeah, must have
So
been.
we reckon to lay it on a platform looking skyward. And the chap with the sword is
Pretty nasty. Yeah. But that tended to be nobility. That's where the likes of Gregor Roy or Alistair would have been executed. They would have been executed there. But the likes of an ordinary clansman or an ordinary guy that had done something wrong that displeased the local lairds and all that, they would just be hung. So, pick your choose. What do you want? Campbell. The name in Gaelic means Cambuel, wry mouth. They originally came from a guy called, the progenitor of the clan was a guy called Dermot O'Dooney, and he's hard to dig out in history, but there are mentions of him in that. And from him, a Sir Colin Campbell came, who was knighted by Robert the Bruce. He gave great help to Robert the Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn, and that was the start of the Campbells becoming the most powerful clan in Scotland, as they became through time. That's Sir Donald. The Glenorchies, there was the chief of the actual Campbells was a guy called Killin Moore, or the Great Campbell, or the Great Colin, in the actual translation. And he's the chief of the whole of Clan Campbell. That Sir Colin had 2 children to 2 different wives. The first wife had the son, and that was the one that became the chief of the Dukes of Argyll line. And the next one was the one that became the Glenorchies, which is the Breadalbin Campbells. And the Breadalbin Campbells started out with lands up about where Barcaldine is nowadays, near Oban, and they gradually extended their lands further and further and further east until they owned the land basically from Barcaldine right through to just about certainly after Aberfeldy anyway, well after Aberfeldy. He was the biggest landowner in Britain at the time, when they were at the height of their lands. Now, the Campbells had this ongoing war with the likes of the McNabs and the McGregors and that, because they always wanted more land. And any time they could get land off these people, they got it. But then they got it signed and sealed and things like that, which is a thing the McGregors, the McNabs, and all the lesser clans, they were not so adept at doing. They were happy to know that they owned something. But you know the way the law works. Just because you're happy that you own it doesn't necessarily mean that you own it in law. The McNabs always used the law. They always had the law on their side. Not the McNabs, the Campbells. So anyway, the Campbells ended up with this is what they ended up with at the height of their power. 1840s. It was finished just in time for Queen Victoria's honeymoon. She came and had her honeymoon there with Albert, Sir Colin, and she said she was coming to she says it was like coming to the lands of some Highland potentate, because from Aberfeldy, the coach ride from Aberfeldy all the way to Kenmore, there was Highlanders standing all the way, and they were all resplendent in new kilts that the Earl had supplied for them and everything, and they're all holding torches, so the road was lit all the way for them to arrive at Taymouth. And that's the Campbells at the height of their powers. By this time, they owned all the McNabb lands, because the McNabb had taken off to Canada, as we discussed earlier. And they built this house at Killin, as Queen Victoria described it, my Lord Breadalbane's little cottage. If you think it's a little cottage, you must be used to big houses. Apparently it had 365 windows, one for every day of the year. I don't know anybody that ever counted them exactly, but that was always the story. And that's what happened when the McNabbs bought the lands back. They didn't like Campbell property on their land, so they blew it up. And that was about 1961, I think it was, John Minette.
We got hammered for doing that.
Well,
My mother worked, she was a servant for the Breadalbanes. There is a servant's tunnel, which is still there.
yes,
And she told us, I don't know what, a group of us, but there's a slight ventilation in the side of the tunnel leading down into it. So at that time I could get through along with Patsy Fraser, Robert Mackenzie and Grant MacDonald. And my mother said you can get through into the kitchen. So we get through to the kitchen, we were on top of the tower. And the workmen spotted us, so we were down backstairs and in through the tunnel and out before we got there. Monday morning, Neil McGill, the headmaster, said, right, who was in the tunnel? Oh, hands up, 6 of the best, the whole office. The thing was rigged for demolition at that point. Unknown, there's no security fences or anything.
yeah,
But we got hammered for our exploits.
that's right. Well, I lived over in the flats a few years later than that, and I got in that ventilation bit. Stitt had bricked up the end of it, and I got into the side of it. And look at me now. I think I'd have a job getting in. It was a wee narrow bit. I was thin then.
It's still there, I had a look at it the
Yeah.
other day.
It will be, yeah. You'll be able to get in. That tunnel will still be there. These Campbells, they were so all-powerful. It's hard to imagine the land that they owned and the power that they wielded. They were major landowners, as I said, but they always wanted more. And I was quite amazed myself when I went up to live up in Caithness in Thurso. We went to Wick, and in Wick we've got Breadalbane Square, and then we've got Campbell Street, we've got this kind of Campbell this, Campbell that. There's all these Breadalbane names up there. There's a lot of people up there called McGregor, a lot of people up there called Campbell, lots of people with likes of Loch Tayside type names. And I thought, it's absolutely amazing. But it turns out that the second, John Campbell, the second Marquess, the second Earl, he had his eyes on the lands of the Sinklers up in Caithness. And he did the usual Campbell ploy up there. The old Earl of Caithness he was getting on. He was heavily indebted, and he was always borrowing money. So John Campbell became his creditor. Oh yes, I'll give you money, I'll give you money, I'll give you money. Eventually he got so much money that the Earl of Caithness signed over his lands to the Earl of Breadalbane on his death. The guy was old and infirm anyway, so it was only a matter of time, and eventually that Earl of Caithness died. And of course, he was looking for an earldom or something like that, because he wasn't Breadalbane then. He was just Lord Glenorchy, and he wanted an earldom. So he applied for the patents of that earldom. He'd been promised it, it had been left him, he had the paperwork for it. And amazingly, through his contacts, this went through without even a voice raised. But it caused such a consternation in Caithness, because there was a guy of Keith, he was a relative, and he had expected the earldom to come to him. And when it didn't, and it went to this new earl, who had to take on the Sinclair armorial bearings so that he could become the Earl of Caithness. So he did that, and what happened was there was partly a rebellion in Caithness. So he had to send an army up from here. So there was a whole army raised down here that had to march up to Caithness to fight for this on behalf of Campbell. When they got up there, they did a usual kind of Campbell wee ploy.
Dirty devils.
They sent ahead a consignment of whiskey, which was meant to be getting smuggled up, but was to, by the way, fall into the hands of the Sinclairs in the hope that they would get themselves intoxicated before the battle, which is exactly what happened. On 28th of June 1670, he was created Earl of Caithness, Viscount Breadalbane, Lord St Clair of Berrydale and Glenorchy, and that was when he was directed to assume it. So it's just after that that the battle takes place, and of course the Campbells reigned supreme. They won the battle, kind of massacred the Sinclairs, who probably had a great hangover anyway, and probably wouldn't be too upset at losing their heads probably that day. So that's when a lot of these things were instituted up there. But this Lord Keith, he had started getting together a lot of friends, and there was uproar in Parliament about it, and people were raising. So eventually the government compromised. They got Breadalbane or Campbell to hand back the Caithness earldom, and they gave it to this guy Keith, and peace reigned supreme up in Caithness, and they made him Earl of Breadalbane then, and that was when he came in, and he came in as the Earl of Breadalbane and Holland. And the reason for the Holland is because in those days that was just about the time of King William, and they were fighting the Orange Wars and things like that, and he was always trying to raise money for those wars in the Netherlands, where he was trying to get the Spanish out of there. They ruled the Catholic Netherlands of Holland, whereas he was the House of Holland. So you could buy an earldom or such for money, and he donated quite a large sum, and that was another earldom. He got Earldom of Holland. And so they carried on, and they had all these vast lands for long enough. Campbells reigned here until after the war, just after the war, in that house, and then eventually that house was used as a headquarters when they were building all the hydroworks around here. A lot of the engineers stayed in there, and that. And as John says, his mother worked over there, and I know Lester Mitchell's mother worked over there. And there are people that worked here. Dougie McNee's mother, and there was in my lifetime there was a lot of them, but there was no Breadalbans here. They were all gone by that time, and the last Breadalban I remember any mention of any place was the son, who left here with nothing, because after the old Marquis died, the mother basically turned the son out. He was the new Marquis of Breadalban, but she took all the money and everything, and she went back to her families and their lands down in Haddington. So the money went away down there, and the Marquis had a name and nothing else. And the last I remember him is he was done for snatching a lady's handbag in London. That was sometime in the 1960s. So we now move, basically we've done the Campbells, we're going to move more to the folklore and culture, which is, folklore of Breadalbane is, as John will tell you, it's absolutely amazing. All over this place there's things. This first one here is a thing called the Vacant. And it's over in Glenlyon at a place called Dalhirla. The legend was that that is the stone where Fingal used to tie his hunting hounds. That was the legend of it. To this day, that field is known as the Dog Field. Fingal's grave, which is, you'll see it just above the park. I think it's more, we call it nowadays, we tend to call it Fingal's Stone. And I think it's more correct. It was examined at the back end of the 1800s, and no grave was found under it. But it is, since time immemorial, been known as Fingal's grave in Killin. Now, Mandy, is in near your house? I took it just for the side of your house. That's known as the Fairy Knoll, that knoll. Didn't used to have all those trees on it when we were younger. It was more just a knoll then. That reputedly was where the old barony courts of Breadalbane were held, on that knoll. And that's where you could have been directed to get hung, or you could have been directed to go to jail or whatever they did with you in those days, And that Fairy Knoll apparently was built out of lands from every farm in the estate round about Loch Tay. And that's why it was built. So that the person that was sitting on it to pass jurisdiction was sitting on the land that he was passing law on. Witchcraft. In Breadalbane, we didn't have the witchcraft as you got it in the towns where they had the public hangings and floggings and things like that. Because I think there was probably more belief in it here, because the people were so suspicious, so superstitious, because they spoke about the fairies, they talk about the Euryths. I mean, if I go back to one of the Euryths here, the Blair Moor, there was a deep pool in the Carpin Burn called Lynn na Sleek, the pool of the shell. And many years ago, a Urish named Sligachen lived there. Sligachen had a young Urish. How they had young ones, I don't know, and there was only one of them in that. But they seemed to get young ones, who, according to the tale, was continually annoying the good wife of Blairmore. Now, Blairmore was a wee kind of villagey place down the lochside, and asking her what was her name. Wisely and cunningly, she answered, "My name is myself, and nobody but myself." As often as the little Urish asked the question, he got the same answer: "Myself, myself, and nobody but myself." At length the woman's patience came in an end, and she could no longer stand the bare legs and mischievous fingers of the Urish any longer. She lifted a dish of hot water and threw it over his legs. When Sligachen heard his young one screaming and crying, he hurried to see what was wrong. "What's happened to you, my child?" he asked. "My ankles have been scalded," was the reply. "Who did that?" Sligachen asked. The answer came: "Myself, myself, and nobody but myself." Sligachen replied, "Well, it is a good thing there's nobody else did that, or I would have punished them." In that way, the wife of Blairmore got rid of the troublesome Urish, and Sligachen never did find out what really happened. The Urish of and this is the point I'm coming to about the belief that people had in these things. The Urish of Carpin is said to have been a splendid weaver, and at work he was the equal of any 6 men. I mean, they really believed that these people were in and doing work for them and things like that. You had in a house in those days, there was a seat sat in the corner. Nobody sat in it. That was the Urish seat. It's hard to credit, but it's true, you know. We're going to Sears now. This is the ruins at Lors, where the Lady of Lors, she was the great seer about this area. She told so many, forecast so many things, and a lot of them that have come true. She foretold that that church would not get past the main arch, the stones, and they arrived. In those days there was no north side Loch Day Road, it was only the south side, so stuff was transported along and then shipped across the loch. And folk laughed when she had foretold that it would never get finished. And they actually got the stones across and stacked them at the shore side. And they were laughing and they said, "We'll prove the Lady of Lors wrong tomorrow." There was a terrible storm that night, a storm that hadn't been seen on Loch Tay side. And it was so bad that the stones all slipped into the loch. But the people were so superstitious, they could have probably got them, because they wouldn't be that far out. But they were so superstitious that to them that was an omen. So the stones were never touched. And there was another kind of roofing material used eventually to finish off the roof. That's a picture of the Loch Tay steamer at Kenmore. There was a death in the loch of people that were out in a boat going someplace, and they were killed. And it caused a lot of grief around the loch because they were well-known people. The Lady of Lors said, "That is not the worst disaster there will be in Loch Tay. A ship belching smoke will cause great deaths on Loch Tay side." She said many people would die. And as a result of that, there was a lot of people that lived locally here that wouldn't step foot on that steamer when it was here. The steamer was here until the war. It was taken away to make bullets in the war. So, and in the late 1980s, 1990s, there was a new boat built, and they were going to produce steamer cruises on Loch Day. And a lot of people said, oh, here's a boat coming back. It'll be now, this is when it's going to be now. But that boat never got past the boat building stage. It never got an engine in it, and it's now being broken up. So maybe it'll never come to pass, or it might, I don't know. And that was, she did sayings. Now, by the way, we're talking about Tarai here. That's that man, name of that man's house. This, you can see where the old cottages have been, and I mean, there's actually more than there was a whole wee village there. Now we've got the same at Cloychan. There's so many places about you. If you go up the Glenquich and that, I mean, it's just full of these kind of places. And this is from when the sheep were brought in and folk were cleared from the land, and you know, and that was one of the things that the Lady of Lors foretold. She foretold that the land would be riddled and sifted of people to make way for the jaw of the sheep. And that's exactly what happened. It came. And that's why, although we live in modern times, a lot of people still say Lady of Lors was very relevant. Look at what she said was correct and things like that. And yeah?
When did she live?
She lived in the 16s. Lady of Lors was actually a Stuart. She was of the royal family of the Stuarts. She was a Stuart of Appin. And she actually, when she married down here, when she married a Campbell, Laird of Lors, when she married down here, the people that lived in the house next to her were known as the companions, because there was two families of them, and they were companions that had been sent down as like her bodyguards and that, and they were of the clan's people.
Where the ruins of the church was, that's down at the bottom of the hill.
That's down by the loch side.
Right.
And
Did it have a name?
That's Lors. That's Lors Village.
That is Lors. I came across that when I was walking there one time.
That is the actual port of Lors. It was known as the port. They were known as ports in those days. The port of Balach was Kenmore, because everything was carried basically by the boat across the loch, you know. So we're going to go to music now. That's the first musical instrument that would be seen in this area. That's a Pictish war horn. It's been rebuilt off they found one in a grave up in Banffshire, and they've remodeled it, and there was actually a guy in the television one night playing it. It's absolutely incredible to hear it. It's quite amazing. And that would be the first, and that was used as a rallying thing to get the troops. And they used to understand by the different tones that were used, the different things to do in battle, and that. They'd obviously planned it and rehearsed it. The Picts, you know, so. MacGregor of Roro. It's not well known, but the MacGregors of Roro they had a piping school, and it was equally as famous as McCribben's. You know, you'll have heard of McCribben's of Skye, pipe music, McCribben's of Skye, but the MacGregors of Roro had so much music, and most of your old pibroch that's still on the go today comes from what was salvaged from the McGregors of Roro. What happened was John McGregor, who was piper to Bonnie Prince Charlie at the Battle of Culloden, came from Roro. He was the chief man at that piping school. And after the battle, he made his way back to Roro and he gathered up all, he knew that they'd be going around ransacking everything after the battle and everything like that. So he knew they were going to get hit. So he gathered up all the music he could and everything like that. And it was all sent across to the MacArthurs of Islay. And there it was kept safe. And that's how a lot of the old music has survived. It's because the MacArthurs of Islay looked after it. And then they started to publish it in time to come and things like that, you know. But that's where it came from. And this stone, up Glenlochy, it's at, I think it's about Cheetah way, up Glenlochy, a wee kind of, there's a big intake, well, I used to work with the hydro board, so it's easier to explain it that way. There's a line of intakes and there's a big intake at the end and it's called McFadgen, and that's where that stone is.
Proper name for it is the Lapagea, it's a stone of shelter.
Aye. Duncan Man McIntyre, who was a guy that was brought in Dalmally, and he was the bard for the Campbells of Redalvin, and he used to sit there on his days working and everything. He never wrote a note of music, sit and compose a new tune, a new poem or whatever. But he had the old Gaelic memory. Everything was stored in his memory. And he could recite hundreds, if not thousands, of verses of poetry just from his head. Remembered everything. Absolutely phenomenal how they did it. It was the old way, and nothing was written down. And the lucky thing we have with Duncan Mann is that he was with the Bedalbin Fencibles, and he was in that army that went up to Caithness to fight the Sinclairs at Caithness. And the army that came from this area, they couldn't believe it when they got up there. The men were all wearing trousers. To them, they were just sissies. They were wearing trousers. And he wrote the famous pipe tune, The Breeches, the kilt against the breeches. He produced words for it, and he got them all to sing it as a derisory song at the Sinclairs before the battle. Look, he is running about in trousers, what kind of Nancy's are you, kind of thing, you know, and all that. And because they couldn't believe it, because they all wore Highland dress still in those days, you know. So, Clachanascatton. It's another famous stone up Glenlochy. That's the one where the weavers from the east used to meet the fisher folk from the west and used to trade herring. Clachanascatton, the stone of the herring, or the herring stone. That was done for 100 years. It was like a meeting point, a trading point, or folk that walked through the hills in those days or that would use it as a meeting point and that. So, but that was its original function, it was a meeting place where they would have a kind of wee mini market kind of thing. Now we're coming to Charles Stewart, Tyne Doon. That's the old youth hostel in Killin, or Time Doing is the name of that building is. And that's where a very, very important piece of Gaelic music was written. It was a book. It was called the Killin Collection of Gaelic Music. And this Charles Stewart of Time Doing, he was the conductor of the Gaelic choir. And that's at the start of the mods. You know, the mod has just started up. They're trying to get the Gaelic culture back up and running. That's how you recognise it now. That's what they built when they knocked it down. That place is called Highland Park now. Imagine knocking that building down. And such a piece of history written in there. It's absolutely incredible. So, the music that Charles Stewart collected in that, we had a local person here who won a silver medal for best newcomer to Gaelic at a mod in Inverness. I think it was back in the 1970s. And I've got a wee film of him here, but it's when he's quite an old man by that time, so it seems not as good.
When I've done my work of day, and I roll my boat away, down the water of Lochte, when the evening light is falling, then I look upon Benlor, where the afterglories glow, and I dream of two bright eyes, with a merry mouth below. She's my beauty, Sydney and Rua, she's my joy and sorrow too, and I doubt she is not true, but I cannot live without her, and my heart is full of woe, for last night she bade me go, and my tears begin to flow, as I sing here, oh, ro, oh, ro, oh, ro, I ho. Near I do love the hair, has more glamour I declare, than all the tresses rare, from Killin to Aberfelly, be they lint white, gold and brown, be they blacker than the snow, they're no one worth to me than a melting flake of snow. For your dance is like the gleam of the sunlight on the stream, like fairy songs they seem, the songs you sing at milking, and my heart's a boat in tow, and I give the world to know, if she used to let me go, as I sing here, oh, oh, oh,
I think that'll be enough. We'll not do the other song because we've got another song which was written about Killin by a German woman that lived here, but I don't think we'll bother doing that. So, I mean, when I was young, that was quite common in the village. Willie would sing at local retailies down in the hall and that, and you had them about every month, and there was touring people that used to come round that were in the mod circuit and that. And Cumangaila had a branch in Killin. There was still some Gaelic here, but the old Persian Gaelic is dead now. I would have thought Ella Walker would have probably been the last natural speaker of it. But we always had music in the pubs about here and that. It was always Scottish type music and that, and it was always good times. And I've got a wee film here of the Clachy, that pub just across the bridge there, in the 1970s. And it's just a wee few minutes from there. You'll see some logos soon. There's one. There's another one. Done 2, 3. Yeah. Sounds like this chicken.
Go sideburn.
That's tourists. There's a couple of tourists there. Right. That's the kind of like pub life. That was quite common back in the 1970s, and unfortunately, you go into pubs now, you just don't see that, you know. So I want to finish off. I've got a few photos, old photos of Killin and that here. That's when the trains were in Killin. That was the wee puggy, as we used to call it. And that's Loch Tay station. Now, that's at the head of the loch. And that station used to be able to get the train to there and then get the steamer to other parts of the loch. With the steamer called all round the loch and that. That'd be pre-war. This is Killin 1899. Look at all the wee cottages here. The population of Killin was actually far higher then than it is now. We think Killin's growing because it's grown quite a bit since the 60s, 70s, but the population then was way far higher than it is now. That's spinning in Killin. That was a woman, or a man, and I'm not sure what it is, caught spinning in their cottage, and the picture was taken, I think, 1900. That's gamekeepers, is the way they used to dress. You heard of that, John?
No, with the kill.
Kill on with the midges. Oh. I think that would be horrendous. And this is a curling match. Now we're talking about late 18s here. This is Robert Campbell, his memorial at Dalhielick over Glenlyon. He's one of the founders of the Hudson Bay Trading and Exploring Company, and a son of Glenlyon. There's the main street out there was with the cottages at the front here, where that car park is now. You know, the street's wider now at the Capercaillie, and that's the Smithy at the top. And there's the main street as it was, and Miss Lizzie Roberts at Marlinick Cottage. That's the wee National Trust cottages. You've got Glenlochy. That's about 1940. She's still living in there. But there was other people lived in there after that, because I remember Peter and that. So that's about us, folks. And I'll tell you, you must be really bored now. I've gone just about an hour over time, but I think we've had a wee tour about Killin and things like that. And I hope you've enjoyed it. So anyway, so thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Killin Local Heritage Talk by Davie Osler from the Killin Music Festival 2017. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for our latest updates.